Hi, my name's Azza, and I'm doing a series on women's wisdom, the importance of women's wisdom in the world. And the Dalai Lama said that the world will be saved or changed by women's wisdom. So this is a series on women's wisdom, and Judith Jenya is a wise woman. Judith, tell me something that really impacted your life.
Well, I'm going to start first by saying it's a wonderful day that you're doing this on Thanksgiving, my favorite American holiday, and I have always felt such gratitude for life and for having been born in the United States, unlike my parents who had to flee from Europe, and for all the blessings in my life. So I just want to say that gratitude is one of the things that I'm filled with today.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So one of the major impacts on my life was the suicide of my mother. I was 32 and she had been depressed for many years. So it wasn't totally unexpected, but of course something like that is always a horrible shock.
Yeah.
And I always somehow developed the philosophy that the important thing to do in life is to say yes. And to say yes to life, to say yes to what it is that you know is your truth, your true north, and follow it. And I felt always that my mother didn't do that. And my mother was a wonderful, creative woman, but she didn't say yes enough. And so, following her death, I recommitted to saying, that is what I'm going to do. I am only going to do things that are life-affirming and affirming to me, particularly, whether or not they're societally correct or not. And to take chances and take risks that are for some value, but to not hold back, because I had this example of someone who chose not to live her life. And I felt always that I had to be living my life and the part of hers that she didn't live.
Right. That's a powerful motivator to say yes to life. Yeah.
And my mother had other influences on me. My mother was from Russia. She was from St. Petersburg, and her family was Russian, and taught me to love and appreciate literature and art and beauty and travel. My mother also liked adventure, and I love adventure. But in the basic core thing of what it is that you need to affirm about life itself and about your life in particular, she neglected to do. And so I have spent a good part of my life taking chances, starting things, following an ideal that I have or a vision that I have, and trying to raise my children to believe in that as well. That the important thing is to be true to yourself. The most important thing in life is to be true to yourself. And so that example of my mother was very powerful for me.
It gave you that push to be true to yourself, because to be true really to yourself, you've got often family, society, your culture, your belief system in your upbringing, your religion, all pushing against you. That's like this huge tsunami pushing this way, and you're trying to go this way.
That's right. Well, when I had my vision for Global Children, which is what I consider my greatest accomplishment outside my family that I have done.
Global Children?
It was called an organization that I created called Global Children's Organization. And I had a vision, an actual vision of helping children in war-torn regions while the war was on. And I started with children in the conflict in Bosnia and Croatia and the Balkans. And when I visited there in early 1993, I had never been to that part of the world. I had been doing adoptions out of Russia just by myself, but I visited Croatia at that time, and I was dumbfounded by really what war was about and what happened to women specifically. There were rape camps, there was just incredible abuse of the civilian population, particularly women and children. So I had a vision of creating a safe place on an island, because I lived on an island. I lived in Hawaii, these beautiful islands, and Croatia has a coast of beautiful islands, that I could find one little island there where I could create a safe haven for children. I'd bring kids together from all parts of the war, from all sides, and they would have a respite from the war, a chance to heal their souls, their psyches, and a chance to be children again, to play, and that we would start learning some and experiencing some non-violent ways of conflict resolution. So I created a program that's still going on in some form or another, but I actively was there for 10 years. And we had close to 2,000 children in this program. It was in Northern Ireland as well, and then expanded it to LA gang-affected children. And I worked in Kosovo and I worked in Jordan, but the main work was in Croatia and Bosnia, particularly in Bosnia. And
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. That is so important.
Yeah, it is. And the thing about it was that everybody that I initially told anything about this, they would say, you can't do that. You don't have the money. Who's backing you? How are you going to do this? It's impossible. And so I thought to myself, everybody that says no, I say yes, I can do it. And I did. Okay, so when I was working in Russia, every single official said to me, "Niet." I said to myself, that really means not yet. I just haven't found the right way for this person to say yes to me. I gotta try another way.
Great. Yes, 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 yes. You haven't found a way yet for somebody to say yes to you.
That's right.
That's great. That's great. That's a totally different energy than, you know, no, niet, 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 no, 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 implosion. And you lose your dream.
Right. I've seen so many people lose their dream. And a good example is when I did get my program launched on an island, and we did have a safe haven, and it was wonderful, and I always had no idea where the funds were coming from next, but I believed that they would, that if you do the right thing, if you're doing the right work in the world, and it matters, and it has value, somehow
Fantastic.
Support will come. That, you know, taking that step out there and proclaiming what it is you're doing, the support comes to you. So I was traveling around Europe a lot and trying to get money and support for my program, and I was in England, and this woman came to me and she said, you know, I want to do a program for children in Bosnia because there's so many landmines, and I want to do something to help kids who've been injured by landmines. I said, that is fabulous, it's so needed. She said, and I've raised X amount of dollars, but I don't have enough for the total program. And I said, go for it, start the program, and it'll happen, even if you don't have enough. Well, she came and visited me in Bosnia a few months later, and she said, you know what, I didn't have all my ducks in a line, so I gave back the money to the donors, and I'm not going to do the program. I thought, you know what, ducks are never in a line, and they're certainly not in a line for innovators. You just go for it, and then things fall into place. So her giving up on her dream reinforced me that I just don't do that.
Did you hear that? Ducks are never in a line. Things don't happen that way. But every obstacle is an opportunity for growth, isn't it?
And it's also an opportunity for creative thinking. Now let's see, do I go under, over, around, through? How do I get past this obstacle? Because most obstacles can either stop you dead, or you can regroup and say, okay, that approach didn't work, now maybe this approach will work. Because most things in life have a way of working out if you look at alternatives and possibilities and keep saying, well, that experiment didn't work. And, you know, like Thomas Edison experimented, I don't know, 9,000 times before he got the right light bulb. Things don't happen one shot. You know, it takes a lot of falls and false starts and maybes before you get to the right path.
And all of the falls and maybes and you know, all of that just builds energy, doesn't it?
It does.
It builds your energy and determination.
It does.
If you see it in that way, right? If you see it as an opportunity.
Well, everything is depending on what glasses you're wearing, right? If I put on dark glasses and look at the world through dark glasses, then nothing's going to work out. And if I look through glasses that are rosy tinted, then I see things maybe Pollyanna-ish. But if I put on glasses that are clear and have some light coming in, I can see the world as it is and it can be, you know? That's how I try to approach life.
So tell me how you dealt with unsolvable problems.
Well, like when I first started working in the war, I had the false belief that somehow doing this kind of work would help the war to end sooner. And of course, it didn't help the war to end sooner. The war ended when it ended through negotiations. But what it did was it helped those particular people that I impacted. You know, it isn't everybody that was helped, but the ones that were able to be part of this program were impacted. And so issues like war and peace are not solvable by, you know, individuals like me who are not in the government, and most people in the government also. So to me, that's an insolvable problem. Because war is the negation of everything that is life affirming. And so I've been a peace activist in one form or another my whole life. And of course, we're in the United States in a state of almost perpetual war. And sometimes I very much despair about this continual violence that we live with. And I would say that is, for me, the most insoluble problem, how to not be at war all the time. Is that what you had in mind?
So how do you deal with that inside yourself? That's an issue for me too, you know, the wars, you know, the human lives, and that impact of war. It takes 7 generations to get out of a family system, you know. I mean, I grew up with a mother that was in the war, and I mean, I heard her nightmares, screaming all her life, and that impacted me in a different way. And apparently it takes 7 generations for the effect of war to leave a family. Imagine that. So how do you deal with that? How did you deal with that inside yourself?
Well, it's not in the past tense. It's still in the present tense. I still deal with it. And I try to create peace around me, because I've learned I can't create peace in the war zones, but in the greater world. But I can create zones of peace where I live, and with my life and my family and the people that I impact and the people that I come in contact with. And by speaking out publicly, I write letters to the editor. I do things that I think might have a little impact, but they have very little. And so that's been one of the hard things to come to terms with for me, is the notion of living peacefully in an unpeaceful world, basically. But that's what I try to do, create peace in my own life. And one of the things I felt very strongly when I was in besieged Sarajevo, and I was there and bombs were falling and things like that were going on, is that art and beauty is the antidote to ugly and violence. And so I try to create beauty in my world, and I try to paint and write poetry and add beauty in the world. That's one of the things I do. And so this woman, this is a painting of mine, and she exemplifies to me the kind of, you want to prove it to me attitude and the strength of Mexican women. She's a very Mexican kind of woman, even though she's very white skinned. That's because I just did that for the painting. But the kind of the attitude of, I'm a strong woman and I'm capable and I'm here, so you have to account for me. You cannot discount me. And I matter. That's what she says to me.
Judith, what was a limiting belief inside yourself that you had to struggle against to keep manifesting what you wanted?
Well, a limiting belief that I had was that I didn't have enough money to go out and create in the world what I wanted to create, because I somehow managed to never have a lot of money, but I've always managed to create a good lifestyle and the work I wanted. But the notion that I had to fight against, because I was raised with this idea, is that you have to have the money first before you can do something.
That's really important to know.
And I've learned that you don't have to have the money first. I bought this house in a miracle. The name of my house is Casa Eloha Milagros, because it was a miracle that I was able to buy a house. And I often start things without the necessary financial means at my disposal. And then once I start it, then I create the financial means one way or the other.
Then things just organize themselves, and it.
Well, it's a lot of effort on my part, and a lot of thinking of alternatives and expecting miracles to happen, and then they do happen. And so it's not being passive at all. It's being very active and being very, very proactive about my beliefs and my values and the intention, the goal I'm trying to create. I think that makes a huge difference in the outcome.
Oh, absolutely. That's fantastic, Judith. It really is. That's really, really important. You know, you don't have to have, well, all your ducks in a row. You don't have to have the money first. You don't have to have this. You don't have to have that. You just need to, step by step, do it. Yeah.
Well, when I was 14 years old, I first came to San Miguel Allende with my mother. My mother, as I said, was an adventurer, and we took a road trip around Mexico, just the two of us. And she had a friend studying art in San Miguel. And then San Miguel was a little town then, a long time ago. But it was always an art center, and I fell in love with San Miguel Allende. And I said, someday I'm going to move here and be an artist. That was when I was 14. And I accomplished that when I was 65. I moved here and I'm an artist and I have shows and I spend time creating, and I live in this wonderful town, San Miguel Allende. And it was a vision that I had and a promise I said to myself when I was 14, and I kept it.
That was the next question. What was your vision, and have you manifested it?
Well, I'm a pretty good manifester. So I wanted to, when I retired and moved to San Miguel from the United States, I wanted to have a home, and I wanted to find a life partner. I had been divorced for quite a long time. So I was able to find this house that I managed to buy and have fixed up little by little. And in 2 years ago, I had a big art show in the city of Guanajuato, another beautiful colonial city about an hour away from San Miguel Allende. And one of the people that came, the last person actually to come to the show, was a man named Mark, who was living in Guanajuato, and now we've been married for the last year.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when you put that out there, you said, I want a life partner. And bingo, you got it, and a beautiful, beautiful man.
So it was one of those miracles, by chance he came to the last person to come to the show, and we just hit it off really, really well, and we were both free at that point in our lives to create a loving, wonderful relationship and marriage, and we've done that.
This is a woman, Judith Jenya, that her life is one miracle after the other. Miracle meaning manifesting things out of thin air that shouldn't have happened if you think about it rationally and logically and plan it. No, it won't happen. But because she just keeps her vision and keeps her intention clear, and step by step by step by step, everything that you've wanted has manifested. That's great. That's a very, very, very important lesson for us all to learn. That's great, Judith.
Thank you.
What's your vision now for the future, for yourself and for what you're doing?
Well, I have started writing poetry, which is something completely new to me. I never did that. And poetry is a way of expressing all kinds of things in a non-linear fashion. And I've always been very good at writing something that, like an essay or something that promotes what I'm doing. But I've thought visually abstraction a little bit, but I've never thought with words. And words are such powerful things. So I want to continue writing in this more lyrical way, but things that matter. And so that the poetry and the writing that I do, I would like it to continue, and I'd like to grow in that area and be able to say something that means something to other people, particularly other women. And I would like to stay reasonably healthy and enjoy my life with Mark and watch my grandson, I have a 10-year-old grandson, grow up in a world that is fit to live in, and that he has clean air and a healthy environment and love and education and the things that people need to lead a good life. And that my children, I have a son and a daughter, both in their 40s, who live in California, that their lives are good and fulfilling. And I want to contribute to my new country, Mexico, and in ways that affect the quality of life.
There's a saying of most indigenous people that when they made a plan for the future, they considered the effect of that 7 generations.
That is so, so important, and it is something that is not happening in much of the world, particularly the United States, I'm afraid. I spent 20 years living in Hawaii, which is a wonderful, wonderful place, and of course there is the beautiful Hawaiian culture there that we all absorb. And the motto of the state of Hawaii, which is taken from a Hawaiian expression, is the life of the land is rooted in righteousness. And I think about that statement a lot, because it's like what the Native Americans feel about the land of their fathers and their ancestors. You must treat the land and the air and the natural environment with respect and righteousness, because if you don't have that, if you despoil the earth and the water and the sky, then you have nothing. And this role of us as caretakers of the earth is so important. And I value the traditional indigenous ways of regarding many things, including the way we treat Mother Earth.
One other saying they have is, Don't ask what your right is. Ask what your responsibility is.
That's really important. You know, one of the sayings that I've always had printed on my wall. I print out different sayings and put them on my wall. Mm-hmm. And one of them is from Hillel, who was an ancient Jewish teacher 2,000 years ago, and it's been paraphrased many times, including by President Kennedy. But the saying is, if I am only for myself, what am I? No, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? And I think that is such a powerful statement.
Absolutely.
Really powerful.
Yep. Yeah.
And so when you think about those things, it's what motivates people to take care of home and country and land and each other. And you have to do it now. It's not some future thing. It is every single day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I read that like 50% or more of American people now are on some sort of antidepressant or pain pill.
I think it's very probable that that's the case. And, you know, we have a culture in which pain is not acceptable, depression is not acceptable, and even feeling bad about something is not acceptable. And all of those are part of living, you know. It is, life can have pain, and life can have disappointment, and
it will, because it's called life.
You know, my favorite rabbi, who's been a big teacher for me, always said, you know, look at a EKG. You're happy when the EKG goes up and down, because that means you're alive. When it's flat, you're dead.
Right,
It's a
that's
beautiful
true.
image.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah.
But a lot of people feel that it's not okay to have the ups and downs. Okay for the ups, but not the down. But you got to be down to come up. And so I think being physically there to experience things, whether they're up or down, makes you alive. It makes you juicy, you know. You know, you don't have orgasms if you don't allow yourself to. You know?
Exactly, exactly.
You got to be present, and you got to be present to things that don't feel good also.
Yeah.
It's just the way life is.
Yeah, yeah. Another saying is meaning gives you energy, gives you life. Meaning.
Absolutely. Creating a purpose for your life, creating a vision, for me, has been so life-affirming. I mean, I have had some enormous challenges. 10 years ago, I was working really hard. I had programs going on in 3 countries. I was flying around, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And on a transatlantic flight from New York to Bosnia, I developed acute pancreatitis. I almost died. I had to be evacuated to a hospital in Germany where I spent 2.5 weeks, a lot of it in intensive care, and I had to give pause to my life. What am I doing? Because I was so busy taking care of everybody else, I wasn't taking care of me. And when I don't take care of myself, my body, my health, no matter how meaningful my work is, I can't carry on. So that experience of near death and having to slowly work my way back to strength gave me a new way of being in the world, which is much more careful of myself as well as others. And careful meaning caretaking, and mindful that, you know, I have a body as well as a soul, and I have to take care of it, and I have to eat the right food, and I have to be aware that I'm in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be 72. I'm not 25 anymore, even though I always feel I am, or 35, or something that's very youthful and has
Well,
more
that's
energy.
amazing. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so I forget that, and I have to remind myself, yeah, I have to take more care, being more careful, being more mindful of just where I am in life.
That's some women's wisdom, isn't it? It's really, really important. Manifesting yourself. There's, I think when you look at a little baby, you can see a potency, right?
You sure can.
A character, not a personality, because you learn that, but there's a character
Absolutely.
and a potency, and how to manifest that potency in the world. It's like every single fingerprint that ever was and ever will be is different. Just that little area. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Every single snowdrop that ever was and ever will be has been different. That's like infinity. That's life showing you infinity. So every single person has their own particular potency to manifest,
That's right.
to put out into the world.
And everyone is born with a certain tendency toward how they're going to be. I mean, I was born, I think, very upbeat. And my father, who was from Germany and very Germanic in his outlook, things have to be a certain way, most of everything's going to turn out bad. And I were at odds all the time, and he spent much of my childhood trying to make me wrong and through various means get me to conform to his way of thinking, and fortunately I never did. And so I'm never quite sure how I managed to not cave in to all of that negativity, but I didn't. And I was always feeling he's wrong. And life is got a lot of rightness to it.
Yeah. So you were always connected to what you know to be true, because you manifested your life. You manifested against great odds, without any money, without anything, and you just kept going and going and going, and based on fact, she manifested everything.
Well, I had that inner strength, and I always had a knowing, and it was like,
that's the strength, don't you think?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
strength, the knowing that you don't let go of.
and not turn it off because other people tell you it's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
even if they're your parents. And that one of the things I did was I read a lot. I was a super avid reader, and in literature, and you can find characters who live out their lives with some kind of joy and lightness and purpose. And no matter what's going on in your own family, through books and through now through movies, but through creative expression that other people have shown you, you can learn other ways of being beside the one that you're in. You don't need to be limited by the family view that you come from, because there's a whole world of writing and film and so on that create other realities that people live. So I escaped into books a lot when I was little, and I still love books and still read all the time. And to me, having the world of literature and art opened up doors that would have been closed otherwise.
Did you have a role model? Did you have some great person that really inspired you?
Well, I had several role models, actually. Throughout my life, I've had the example of some people in my own family my grandfather and grandmother were very in Russia, involved in the Russian Revolution, fighting for what they believed. And my grandfather spent 7 years in prison for his beliefs, but he came back, and his brother, who I loved dearly until he died, stayed in Russia after the others left, and was a Communist Party member and a professor. And he was, in 1938, sent to the Gulag in Siberia because he was a Jew by Stalin. His wife went with him, who was a doctor, and they were pardoned in 1960 and went back to Leningrad at that time. So my great uncle and aunt, whom I visited several times, lost all their grandchildren during the siege of Leningrad. They spent 22 years of their life in the Gulag, and they had no bitterness. They had they had no resentment. They still loved Russia. They loved their life. They loved their city. They loved me. They loved what they had. And if there was one person I've ever known who should have been or could have been full of resentment and anger, it was my aunt and uncle. But they didn't. They instead were full of love and joy and appreciation of what they did have. They were such wonderful teachers to me, because obviously their life had been very difficult. But they didn't choose to live the rest of it that way. I met them when I was 25, and I knew them until their death. So it was very powerful having those people. And then I had the good fortune, I guess, kind of incredible fortune, to meet Albert Einstein when I was a little girl.
Wow.
For a little while, my father worked on a project with his son, and Einstein came to visit his son, and we were invited for Sunday dinner. And when we got there, I was the youngest child, and the other children all went off and left me. And I didn't know who he was. I just, of course, knew he was this grandfather of these other children. And he invited me to come and talk with him, and sat on his lap and told me little stories. And one of the things he said to me was, you know, the most important thing in life is love. And here was this man with these white hair and these crinkly blue eyes, and that's what I remember about Albert Einstein, and it always stuck with me.
One of my role models was my mother. She was an amazing woman. She achieved so much, and she never allowed no to block her, same as you. That's fantastic. And these people give us power. By your nature, you just never gave up.
Well, I also believe in community. You know, we are part of community.
Yeah.
And nobody does it alone. We all get energy from other people. We all get help from other people. And asking for help, is a big part of making your life work, because you certainly don't get anything if you don't ask. And when I had to do a lot of fundraising for Global Children's Organization, I learned from a wise woman named Lynn Twist, who developed something called the soul of fundraising, that the way to raise money is to ask. That it's not as complicated as people think. People want to be asked. We are part of a whole. We are in a community of people. And if you give people the opportunity to be part of something bigger than themselves, most people will take it. You know, you don't need to wait till a disaster strikes, like a flood or something, to help your neighbors. Neighbors help one another. We are all part of that. And I think one of the things that I have gotten from being Jewish is that being Jewish is not done alone. It is done in community. You are part of a community. And the kind of Judaism that I know and love is you don't have to believe in God, you don't have to believe in this, but you do have to love other people and treat them well, treat them as yourself. That's what you have to do. And that it is through that community and through that creating a place where other people are respected and honored and cared about, that you can flower as well. That you don't flower if other people are, you have to step on everybody to get there.
No, that's there's a Russian expression, you know, people that do that have very short legs, meaning they don't get very far, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in the short run, you can get ahead financially or whatever, but in the long run, you lose. And it's by building community and by sharing the wealth of life and energy and what's available that everybody does better, I believe. And I was thinking about my little sayings I used to have. I used to be a lawyer too, and I practiced law in Hawaii. And I had this thing over my desk that said, under promise and over deliver. And I have tried to do that my whole life, that I can have visions, but I don't promise people things that I don't believe I can somehow give in full value, because then people are always feeling cheated, and I don't want that.
Do you have anything else before we finish to say, to just inspire people that are maybe depressed in a black hole, or think they're too young, or you know, or women can't?
Well, I think that word can't should be abolished from the vocabulary as a starter. But I don't think that age matters. You know, I started my real life work when I was 50. And I had done all kinds of things before that. But the work with children around the world, I started that when I was 50. And my feeling is that at each age we have different gifts. Different things.
Oh, that's great. Yes. At each age we have different gifts. That's really important.
And so what one thinks about or is able to envision at when you're 15 is different when you're 35, is different than when you're 55. That you accumulate wisdom and you accumulate experience that moves you to the next level. You might not have even conceived of it when you were younger. So, you know, at each stage of life, you do things that are more appropriate for that age of life. So you're maybe too young to be a wise old woman when you're 25, but you're able to be a manifester when you're 25 or 35. You know, so the physical energy and the psychic energy and the collected knowing that one has, your heart's wisdom is different at each age of your life. And respecting that and not wishing it was something else is a way of feeling good about your life. Because if you're always wishing it was something else, then whatever is not getting noticed. And I've spent times in my life where I was wishing for something and not appreciating the little things around me, and that appreciating, that noticing, that seeing, you know, it's one of the concepts I like is to look at where is God, whatever God is for you, at this moment, right here, and to find God or holiness or sacredness in your daily life just by noticing it. And you know, the important stories from Judaism, from the Torah, are where is God, where you look and where you listen. You know, stop, look, and listen. Those things bring the holiness and the sacredness of life into your life. But you got to stop and notice them. And all the stories in the Torah are about that. You know, notice this, notice where God is, notice, you know, here I am here, but you got to look, you got to listen. And I think that's true of the sacredness of relationships and the sacredness and the beauty in everyday thing. And when I was young, I was too busy to notice all that. So that's something I've acquired with getting older.
Fantastic, Judith.